Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. What can I get for you?
Let's see if you can solve this riddle. What does Dan Rather, the Rockefeller Studio, and a serial killer have in common?
Pull up to the second window and we'll see you next crime.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. I am John here with Jamie. Feels like we're going to be talking about Garth Brooks and all of his murders. What's happening?
Man, I would love to talk about that. In case people haven't heard that theory, somebody tracked down a list of murders that happened that correlate with Garth Brooks' touring schedule completely, or specifically in the 90s, and it's certainly an interesting correlation. I don't buy it. I don't think he killed people, but I mean, I can see the obvious link there, but that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about a separate individual that ended up, I mean, doing some awful things and was ultimately tied back to a very interesting situation with Dan Rather.
I am completely not familiar by this, so how about you get the ball rolling, man?
All right. Let's go back to the year 1994. That's when a man named William Tager murdered a stagehand outside of the Today Show studios in New York City. He became well known for this murder, but the fascinating part to me is when he was linked back to a potential assault on CBS News anchor Dan Rather. You remember Dan Rather? Is he still kicking around?
I don't know if he's still kicking around, but I do remember him. So Dan Rather, I mean, just kind of an infamous host on this news channel. But,
a legend.
Yeah. But on a fall night in Manhattan in 1986, he was assaulted and he was walking home when two men approached him and they were repeating the phrase, "Kenneth, what is the frequency?" They repeated that as they attacked him. What in God's green earth does that even mean?
No clue. I mean, I wonder if it was just some kind of code between the people there, but if somebody just walked up to you, two people, and they started talking back and forth like breaker, breaker, 99, 129.
What's the frequency? I'd be like 106.7, the pinnacle, baby.
Let's go.
What are you talking about?
Live sports action. Yeah, I don't know.
So this didn't kill him, obviously. He went on to have a very successful career, but he did suffer from bruises, swelling. But this bizarre attack was seemingly random, and then the repetition of that phrase and the lack of a clear motive made it a media oddity. There were initial suspects, but they were never really, nothing ever came about. There was no charges, but the mystery itself was lodged into pop culture and lore. I mean, a lot of people remember this. It actually included REM. Do you remember that band?
I do.
They actually have a song. It was a hit called "What's the Frequency, Kenneth?"
I love that. I never knew that until this story. Now let's fast forward to 1994, and this is the same year that they released their Monster album. Outside of NBC's Rockefeller Studios, Tager approached the building in a smock coat with a concealed rifle. He shot and killed Campbell Montgomery, who was a stagehand who was attempting to alert authorities to somebody being there with a weapon. When he was arrested, Tager claimed that networks had been broadcasting signals into his brain for years, that they were bugging him and transmitting frequencies into him. He said this attack on NBC was to disable those transmissions. Now, we joke about putting on like a tinfoil hat to ward off people trying to control your brain. I think Tager was all in on that.
Well, dude, he was interviewed by psychiatrists, and he would claim that he was a time traveler from the year 2265, and he was sent back in time under a mission with a chip in his brain tracking his every move. He even asserted that he had assaulted Dan Rather in 1986, saying the Kenneth phrase referred to a figure in his own timeline, Kenneth Burroughs. These wild claims, combined with his earlier assault theory, created a hybrid legend of criminal and conspiracy, mixing delusion, public figures, and the media paranoia. what if he's legit? What if he's a time traveler?
Well, we're not going to know if Kenneth Burroughs exists until we get to the year 2265, if anybody makes it that far.
There's no way this conspiracy lasts that long, right?
No, I mean, it's 2025 and I'm just learning about it.
Fair
so
enough.
I don't think it's that notable, but they did arrest him. They found his rifle and pretty much easily put him at the scene. And while he was arrested, he confessed to this attack on Dan Rather. However, the statute of limitations had run out, so he could not be charged for that particular attack, which I don't know. I go back and forth about statutes of limitation when it comes to violence, but don't really love that. In 96, he pled guilty to first-degree manslaughter instead of murder, largely due to questions about his mental state. If he was trying to make himself seem crazy, he did a great job. He was sentenced to between 12 and 25 years in Sing Sing prison. And in that plea deal, the prosecution acknowledged that his mental illness played a role in this crime and was a major mitigating factor.
Yeah. And Dan Rather did point out that this was one of the two men that approached him that day. Traeger served his term, was paroled in August of 2010. And his release did come with some conditions: regular substance abuse testing, anti-violence counseling, probation from driving, and restrictions on alcohol use. Man, I'm joking here, but like, what if he saved us from something we don't even know about? What if he was a time traveler? And the idea of chips in your brain was, how common of a thought was that in the 80s? Because computer chips looked nothing like what they do now.
Right. No, you're completely right. Most people wouldn't have known what you were talking about. They would have thought you were talking about potato chips. But in 2025, we're putting chips in people's brains, right? That's what Neuralink is. So I don't think this guy was from the future. I do think that he had a lot of problems, and I think it really jumped out when he started claiming that the news was putting signals in our head. You and I had an episode of Bless Their Hearts this week where we talked about generally America and what news you can trust. And if they're out here sending frequency signals into my head, I'm not going to trust any of them.
Yeah, it's strange, man, for sure. And it also makes you question, like, if you're that mentally ill that you can't even know if your thoughts are legit or not, should you be allowed to be out? Shouldn't you just live in a cushy nursing home type situation, but never be allowed to leave without supervision?
I'm really hoping that they were able to do more assessments more recently and establish that hopefully he is in a better place mentally than he was then. But I can't say that for sure. Nobody really can. We don't have any other reports of him committing violence, so I'm really hoping that that's behind us. But are you as surprised as I am about not hearing about this Dan Rather attack? You were like a baby when this happened, and I was little, but still, I feel like that's a story that should persist.
Yeah, I am surprised. I had no idea about it. So yeah, this was an interesting case for sure.
Yep. This case of William Tager, who was a time traveler that punched Dan Rather. There you go. That's your story of the day, and you got it in 10 minutes or less.
Would you like crime with that?
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.